So, who knows ocean?
Good.
Okay, that's a pretty good informed environment. So, Irene, first tell us a little bit about what is ocean?
What is ocean?
Yeah.
Ocean. So we're building a next generation internet layer, an ocean protocol and a network. It's open source, decentralized, blockchain based, and the focus is trusted data sharing, data exchanges, and building data supply lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have huge amount of data. Everybody who has an artificial intelligence network needs lots of data, all the cars, and you basically through your exchange, I can buy that, and my rights are guaranteed that I only use it to, for example, train my network or something like that.
Yeah, for example, yeah.
Yeah, and you have a transfer, and I pay for it, and you basically inform everybody and pay everybody, right? That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And data is pretty big, right? I mean, this whole data world and artificial intelligence world are really becoming very important. So you're working in a number of alliances, right?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Yes, and the one I really liked was Moby. Is that?
Yeah.
What is Moby?
What is Moby? Moby is an alliance of automotive companies. There might be some in the audience. Who is in Moby from this room? How many people do know Moby? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are a number of.
Yeah, it's BMW. I mean, give me a couple of names who are into the alliance of Bo. It's all the big brands.
It's all the big brands. There are brands from the States. There are brands from Europe.
Yeah,
it's a group of. It's big. It's coming together. And I like very much the previous discussions on building alliances.
Yeah.
So the first couple of talks in the session, I thought they were giving kind of like the blueprint for what are the type of things that you need to do. And Moby is an example of the things that, for example, Jürgen was giving 6 points on open permission, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And these are groups of companies that are experimenting and are trying to test some new protocols and technologies like the Ocean Protocol, but they are actually looking at others as well. And what are the actual real advantages that it can give them to achieve their objectives.
Yeah,
but these people come in a spirit of co-opetition. Yeah, it's a collaboration between competitors because they see a market need to actually progress with their businesses.
Yeah, I think it's really amazing that Moby exists and that all these companies are peacefully working together. Okay, let me get the second member, Jon Kuiper. Can you come up? And Jon was really a hero last year because. He was at Koopman, he was making sure that thousands of cars were driving around, delivering cars from OEMs to dealers and back. And then, you have your own. And now, you were the CEO, right, of that company?
Yes.
And that blockchain, just keep on talking and then at a certain point it will work. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You were the CEO, did you have a good salary?
No.
No, you didn't have a good salary. Yeah, you had a good salary. I mean, but you didn't you didn't have to leave. I mean, why did you leave that company to build an alliance of all these car transportation logistic companies and to basically give every car a digital passport on the blockchain?
Yeah, because I got the opportunity to lead a truly European with a global ambition company organization in a totally new field, and with the ambition to change the world that we're living in. Fulfill the promise of democratic data sharing. I'm a little bit of an idealist.
Yeah, but was that the idea, or how long were you the CEO of Koopman?
Almost 5 years.
Yeah, no, 5 years is a nice amount of time. So now, what has your experience been to say, oh, let's have the Scandinavians, and what kind of consortiums do you have now? Who are the partners now?
Yeah, so I'm now the leader of Vinturas. Vinturas is a consortium of 5 European logistic service providers in the finished vehicle industry. So not transport companies, Frans.
It's a good name, yeah.
Finished vehicle logistics.
Yeah.
Shipping, storing, adding value to new cars and to used cars. So that's the business that we're in.
Yeah, and you had this stack of paper with every car.
Yeah.
If you have these 10 cars on a big truck, there was this stack of papers.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
Basically...
So on a quick note, the whole purpose is digitalization of the total supply chain, which is extremely scattered, full of paperwork, very long lead times, and very, very old-fashioned. So huge opportunities. And already in my Koopman time, when we started with a proof of concept that was very successful and got a wide audience in our world, I was able to interest a few companies who said, Jon, this is the way to go. We need to change the world in this way. And if we don't do it, because the technology is there, somebody else will. So
Yeah.
will
So
we
how was your experience working with these people and making them enthusiastic and at the end even quitting your job and starting this thing?
Yeah, of course, everybody sees the advantages of the digital world, and blockchain is working together with competitors, which is difficult, as we all see. But I was lucky in the circumstances that I had a Scandinavian colleague who really believed in the concept. I had an Irish-UK colleague who really believed in the concept, somebody from the Baltics. So there's a nice geographical spread, and it makes it easier to talk to each other and to agree with
You're
each
not
other.
really competing with each other, right?
No, not head-to-head, no.
No. And now you're making this consortium, and is everything hunky-dory? Is everybody on board, and are they really committed?
Yeah, so we started with the first ones, and they are shareholders in Vinturas. So
Yeah.
we all aligned, and we went through all the governance issues and discussions, but we agreed eventually, which was hard work. And then we're talking to more interested members, because one of the things when we issued the press release around 4 weeks ago was already that some companies were calling me and saying, hey, why am I not in? Why didn't you
Good.
ask me?
Okay, they
And
started
that's
to call you.
Exactly what we want to achieve.
Okay, so you passed that thing. Okay, let's go to the third party. Walter Kok is the CEO of Energy Web Foundation. Energy Web Foundation is one of the most exciting groups of energy companies in the industry. And it's a miracle that they are just happily talking to each other, because, I mean, this whole market is decentralizing, it's becoming green, there's a lot of things happening and changing. And tell me about where the state is of this, what the goal is, and what they're trying to, which state you're in.
Yes, well, we're in a good state.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
I'll tell a little bit more. So it started 2 years ago, roughly, and it actually started with 10. And the 10 large corporates like Shell and these type of companies.
Now give me a couple more names.
Stedin from the Netherlands, Singapore Power Group, in Thailand, PTT. It's
completely
global,
all
totally
over the
global.
place,
PGM
everywhere.
in the US, it's really huge. And basically, the pitch then was, hey, we can all spend 10 millions with consultants to explain to us what a blockchain is, but why don't we get together as an industry and find it out ourselves?
Yeah.
And then when it started, startups joined, like Applied Blockchain. I saw Adi here, but also other companies, and also some VCs came in. It was still crypto summer then. And basically, the promise is, let's build a chain for the industry. So it's a proof of authority chain. The validated nodes are run by the participants in the industry. And we're actually going live a week and a half from now.
Oh,
yeah, so it's very exciting. Yeah.
So in 2 years, that's not bad. And what does Singapore and Shell and all these companies have? What's their common cause? That they need a platform to basically transact on.
So the idea really is, if decentralization is of course happening a lot. There's two big trends that you see in the industry. One is green, so the certificates of origin, more like the logistic case. And the other one is with electric cars. I used to work in telecoms, and there we said, let's put a SIM card in every device, because then we can IoT. And in the energy sector, it's let's put a battery in any device. So if your car can make money for you, if it starts giving power back to the grid.
Yeah.
So the whole, how do you manage the flexibility? How do you actually make producers out of consumers? That's a trend that everybody is involved in. And of course, everything moves to electricity. That's the other one.
Okay, so it's not necessarily that all these parties need to work together, transact with each other, but it's more everybody has the same problem. Decentralization, every solar panel will become their own energy, and you basically have to measure who's putting what on the chain and who's invoicing and who's
trade,
taking.
settlement, the whole thing. Yep.
Yeah, and so how many companies are now member?
So we now have 103.
Yeah, 103. So you're really
members
scaling up,
and growing, and of course now we're into the phase where we have a live chain and we start real use cases, real money. It has its own native token, so it's real monetization happening.
I really want to know more about it, but I cannot, because we're learning only about the alliances messages. But he's, Walter's a really interesting guy. Let me ask Frans to come up. And Frans van Ette is from the coalition manager of the Dutch blockchain. Here's some more. We have plenty of microphones. And okay, so we're very happy to have you here, to have the Dutch, the coalition here. What's the state, and what are you trying to accomplish? Because you were with 28, I think, you were a huge number to start. And I was
growing,
always...
And growing.
And growing. So tell us where you are and what do you want to accomplish?
Yeah, so we've done quite a number of things on, say, the foundation of blockchain. So we looked at things like identity or the human capital. So how do we train people to become blockchain aware? How get universities and colleges having a higher level of education on blockchain?
Yeah, because who's member of the consortium? Give me a couple of big
so
names.
it's roughly 25 colleges and universities. It's roughly 20 corporates, and there's a couple here, like IBM, like Rabo,
but also
like
the
ABN,
NS,
like
the NS.
No more. There's legal companies like Pels Rijke, CMS, and I'm going to forget a lot. PwC, APG, Hidden. Let's not forget you. So no, it's a nice collection of organizations.
Yeah, it's like the whole world. Okay. And what do you then do together, except for knowledge and promoting the idea of the blockchain in general?
So basically you could say there's two things that we do. One is really the fundamental of blockchain. That's the stuff that I just mentioned. Things like identity work and things like training people, making sure that universities are getting better in training their blockchain students. That's one aspect. The other aspect is really use cases. Mm-hmm. So we are, the community of organizations are true believers in blockchain for good. That blockchain is a force that can really drive our society to a better place. So, and we have identified 5 important use cases that can help the society to move ahead, be better, be more fair, be more transparent. So these are things like what was just mentioned, diplomas. So we work, and that's why I was pointing my finger high when Mark was mentioning this. So something like diplomas, we know it works, we can build those things, we can have a number of organizations together, but how do we scale? And that is where we come in. You know, if you have these organizations together, being the Dutch Blockchain Coalition, going to Europe and say, we are big, you know, we can scale this up, work with us, then Brussels is listening, and the Germans are listening, and the Italians are listening. So you can really scale stuff.
Okay, so that is, and that is of course, you've solved the problem of identity, right? It's done. So when can I put my own identity and verify it with everybody in the whole world and put it on the blockchain and then decide from that moment on what to do with it?
Technology-wise, you know, it's not a problem, right? So we have Uport, we have Sovereign, you know, there's good stuff in the Netherlands, there's Irma, there's TrustChain at TU Delft. Technology, not an issue. But how do we implement this stuff? You know, there's legal things that need to be done. There's a lot of choices to be made. There's governance issues. There's a tremendous amount of non-technical things that we need to organize with each other. And that is something that there's a good team also with the banks, ABN AMRO, Rabo, ING, AFM, Ministry of Internal Affairs.
No, you have a lot. You have a lot. But I mean, how do you get something done? How do you have everything in our society, but how do you then move this group of people to do something concrete?
Right. Now I understand your question. It's two things that you need to do. One is having the vision, having the long-term perspective, the tedious work of making sure that things land also in Dutch society with the law, etc. Big, complex, long-term, not easy, right? And then there's the other side that you have to approach it, and that is learn, and learn by experiment. So we've taken, for instance, Sovereign, we put it on servers, we made it work with Ledger Leopard, ING and other partners. And we're learning with those kind of implementations. And by learning, we're feeding that into this tedious, complicated process with the government. So it's both things, experiment, but also having a long-term vision there. Okay,
we saw the presentation of Jürgen about the experience with a consortium. So we have a lot of different people. I mean, you're a supplier of tools. You are an organization which has everything in the world. You're very targeted to an energy which is everywhere all over the world, and you're doing extremely very practical things. You know, so there's lots of different kinds of consortiums needed to be built. When you started, Jon, about this journey to find a bunch of people for your consortium, how did you do that? And where did you start? What was your vision of the little beachhead you needed to expand?
Yeah, the vision, of course, is we need to do it together. And one of the examples I always use is data is value. As we all know, in the meantime, collective data is exponential value. And that's also what I try to bring over as a message to people. Let's work together, let's contribute together, and we will all benefit together, which is also part of our vision. If you join, you will all benefit. Mm-hmm. And people accept that, people understand, and it's a limited amount of organizations that understand, and that allowed me to start this initiative.
Okay. Did you, who paid for the beginning of that, when you started with the consortium? Who paid it? Was it Koopmans, or did you...
Koopman is one of the investors in Vinturas, but these 3, 4, 5 companies that believed in the idea collectively invested, and they all invested the same amount of money, so we started on an equal foot with each other, which of course is very important if you start something like this.
Mm-hmm. And you're going live. You're going live when? When was it?
End of September.
End of
we will
September.
Go into testing
and then,
with our customers.
what kind of services do you have then? And how is everybody at the same pace? Are some people much more enthusiastic, or how do you manage the different speeds?
Yeah, so what we will deliver is we promise our customers and think about OEMs, so car manufacturers, but also think about dealers. We basically promise our dealer in the test phase for certain lanes, you will be able to see your vehicle from the production site on its way to the dealership. And most of you had the opportunity to buy a new car sometime and wanted to go on holiday and called the dealer and say, is my new car coming? Because I want to go on holiday. Got the answer. I will call you when it's here. And no more information. And we're going to fix that and many other things, but that's a classical good example, I think.
I would say. How did you do that in your energy?
Starting point?
Huh?
It was a very simple starting point. It was basically, we thought it was a great idea. I wasn't there, so I'm talking on behalf of others. And the deal was if 10 organizations give $250K each, then we start. If not, then we don't do it.
Okay,
And there were
that's
12.
very
There were
simple.
12.
Okay, so you got 10 people all around the world to basically commit to that
and then
idea.
It started from there, and then. The rest.
And then the first thing you do as an alliance is have meetings and,
Have a meeting. What's our
conferences
agenda?
and
What are we going to focus on? Then it was decided on, okay, let's do the chain. It's Ethereum-based chain. Let's do that. Proof of authority, because we didn't want to waste energy, of course. And then, of course, also stimulating the system around applications on top of the chain.
yeah. Is it only energy? Is it all kinds of energy, or is it only electric, or is it oil, or is it everything?
It's everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have everything all over the world, it's really hard to come up with a set of, that is not a very modest thing. It's very, just like you, it's very difficult to keep the group together. Does it mean that you only keep on? You only stay in information and learning and...
Well, in the beginning, yes. So there was a lot of, joint discovery.
Yeah.
But then, of course, with Parity Technologies, I know they're talking too. We developed the client to run the chain. Tobalaba, the test network was there. It was for free, so a lot of experimentation then happened.
And other people, then your
started
50,
to join.
everybody can do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, of course, typically the innovation teams of the energy sectors then started to experiment with it, got good use cases out of it. But now we have real production. For example, in Singapore Power Group, they now run one of the markets on our chain. We're building one in Thailand.
And what does it mean? They run one of their markets on the chain?
So this is the certificate market, so the green certificates.
The green certificates,
So there's a lot of buying behavior with large corporates that they want to go and buy it at the source, but they want to know that the energy that's being produced is green, and that's of course a brilliant use case for the chain.
Okay, so that's simple, and that can be for oil and for electricity.
Yeah, we started
for a lot
with
of
green, but it can go to carbon, it can go everywhere. Yeah.
Okay, Irene, what is your experience? Which alliance do you know the best? Is that Mobi, or are there other ones where you really have been involved and where you can basically tell us about the process of putting these companies together? And because they're so wildly different.
It is vast, it's wildly different. It depends on the use case. But I've been involved in building European alliances, for example, for 20 years, which in the end is bringing startups and large companies and universities and research centers together. But actually the basic principles are the same. In the end is a number of people that have some sort of like joint interest, that you have to give them some roles to play around and not, step into each other, play fair, that type of thing. And then driving them into specific direction, and through time, hoping that everything makes sense for everybody. And when it stops making sense, try to look for a different path to move forward. Yeah, I'm talking about 25 years doing this type of things. I think the blockchain space is slightly different because what I said before about the co-opetition, it is a reality. In a data sharing space, not every single company has all the data that they need to progress with their AI or machine learning based AI. And it's a question of sharing with a trusted set of tools. It can be the Ocean protocol, it can be something else, because everybody has their own choices, a combination of integration of technologies, but governance and openness are, in my opinion, the main differences that this type of environments bring. And I personally like to hear more about not only what you guys do, but what other people in the room are doing, because I don't think we have a tried and tested recipe, although I have to say that I really like what Jürgen was presenting.
Yeah,
those
very
6
structured,
points,
organized.
those 6
and then his
points.
next colleague was doing it completely the
Exactly.
other way
No,
around,
but
so that also
no,
gives...
it makes sense, because it's an iteration. Iteration is a word, that it came up in many of the presentations. Now, one word that I didn't hear was compromise. And when you're building win-win collaborations, you need compromise from all parties.
Yeah.
It's a very boring word, but it's common sense brought to partnerships.
Yeah, we Dutch do not know how to do that.
That's not true. Spanish people don't know how to do that.
Let's see. Hey, I have here, how much was starting capital? You had it already, it was 10 times 250. How much was it with you?
Enough to start.
Was it more or less than 250,000?
That was 2.5 million.
Yeah, for you it was 2.5 million, but for you was it more than per person?
Decent platform, you need more.
Yeah, so you a couple of million, you raised a couple of million, and what about, how much is it to be part of the Blockchain Alliance?
It's very cheap.
Yes.
35,000 only. But for startups, just join us and we get to work together without money.
Okay. Then the business model, it's clear with you what you do. You do it on a transaction basis. What is
Subscription based. Yeah, so it's a foundation, so it's
every year you pay the same amount, doesn't
Yeah,
matter
but-
how much you use it or not, the platform?
Yeah, but the idea is that a foundation disappears one day. And so totally decentralized, and then we no longer exist. It's owned by the
Sure,
industry.
yeah, I believe that. I
That's
mean,
true, yeah.
but do you?
Watch
I
this
mean,
space.
but to have a good common interface, even though the technology, is basically decentralized, you need a lot of people to talk about this whole thing about.
Well, if the affiliates wants us to continue, we continue. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't see many. I don't see that change. What is your business model in the alliances with you? When do you get paid? I mean, you raised money by doing an ICO and was one of the...
So the Ocean Protocol is a private non-for-profit foundation,
Yeah.
and the funding comes from token loans.
Yeah.
Raise money that way in private fundraising. Business models that can be developed on top of an open source decentralized protocol that focuses on data sharing is up to each organization that actually wants to play in that type of ecosystem. So it's build and integrate and do your own thing.
Yeah.
So there are no limits to that. It's a protocol.
Now, Ocean is one of the... Really, I mean, it has an amazing network of companies participating and also an extremely good team. So, I mean, they're in the right place in the right time. It's a very difficult problem, but they're doing a good job. Okay. I see platforms versus consortia. Do you see yourself as a consortia or as a next generation platform? Yeah, so you're completely on different kinds of, completely different kinds of things. Let's go to the next one. How do you do about the public procurement rules? Just like, are you in Europe, you're international? If these alliances of decentralized apps, how are you dealing with governments? I mean, if you get to the product level, I mean, you're not on the government. Well, you're basically trying to influence the governments.
Well, let me put it this way: you need to be very much aware, because we are in this pre-competitive stage. So we do the foundation and we do use cases for the public good. But even in that kind of an environment, you need to be very, very aware of how far you can go with what you're doing. So we take a lot of legal advice from our legal experts.
Well, you have a lot of lawyers who are a member, right?
Yeah,
so,
luckily. And they point their fingers in the air when something goes wrong. That's good.
Yeah, you don't have to pay for it. That's really good. Yeah.
Blockchain is definitely a good business case for lawyers.
Yeah.
In our going live too, the technology is okay. It's not too complex. But for example, we have a native token, and in Switzerland, we are actually a utility. So are we in Malta, so in Singapore.
Yeah.
But of course, the SEC thinks different. And that's really messy to get legal opinions and where do you list on what type of exchanges. It's a lot. So
how's your involvement with legal been? How was that?
Yeah, I agree with what you say. We're not into government-owned entities potentially yet, so I wouldn't have a good answer on this question.
Okay. Here's a question: what is the difference between a platform and a consortium? Can that be answered?
It depends on the definition of platform, really.
Yeah.
It's a group of people that come together. It's a piece of tech that enables those collaborations.
Yeah, I think a platform is something which really transacts and organizes industry, and a consortia can be, an alliance can be anything, right? That kind of stuff.
Governance.
Yeah. Okay, so next year when we stand here again, what is the Blockchain Alliance? What are you going to deliver for us?
Yeah, maybe two things that I would love to see. One is the example by Mark. So to really bring that up to a European level. So technology works, a couple of very good organizations behind it. How do we scale up? So let's try to see how we can make that work next year.
Yeah.
So that is one very important one. The second one is the digital identity. And there we really need to do a lot of work here in the Netherlands. And we can be the first mover in on the European level.
Yeah, and then I think if you are successful, you're having these 30 companies together and they're thinking about identity, they have some ideas, they do some testing. If you then want to be successful, it needs to get out of your general alliance, right? It needs to become a separate platform thing, alliance, but it needs to go outside the Poolse Landdag, I would say, right, to be successful.
Yeah. Correct.
So is that also part of the plan? We have a big group together and we spin out little companies?
Everything that we do is public. I mean, we are partly funded by the government, so there's nothing that is a secret in what we do. So code, reports, ask us the questions. But we also publish actively. We have on the 21st of June, we're at the Rabobank in Utrecht. Everybody's still invited. There are already 350 people coming. But there we will present all the use cases, the stuff that we're doing, and how we move forward.
Yeah, we're doing that afterwards. We're going to talk about some of these cases which you're presenting. But there's a whole day about what's happening in Holland, in the Netherlands, on the blockchain cases. Yeah. Where do you want to be next year? What are you going to deliver? You have this platform. It's already, about all these certificates. Where do you want to grow to?
Yeah, so I think there's two important things. One is that, of course, there's real action on the chain, so that the energy participants use it to do the trade. And I would say a lot on the certificates.
Yeah, for the green certificates, right? That's the first. Yeah.
And hopefully also some real-life POCs, I would say, on managing the flexibility of the grid. We're talking to a lot of, let's say, energy, including the Netherlands, but also in Austria. So I think we have a couple of POCs running there, but that's of course dealing with real electricity. If you mess it up, it's a little bit of fire. So there's a lot of physics that comes into play. And I think we'll be experimenting with scalability solutions on the chain itself, like substrate or that type of architecture.
Well, Jon, you're the most practical one. I mean, how many cars are there being transported in Europe at the moment per year?
17 million new cars are produced in Europe and shipped to dealers or to harbors for further. So all in all, import included 20 million.
Yeah.
When we start, we have around 4 or 5 million vehicles on the blockchain. So at the end of September, we will have data for 5 million vehicle movements, 25% of the market. And next year, my ambition will be, of course, to grow bigger. The winner takes all, we know that. But on top of that, we have an ecosystem of partners. There are many partners, potential partners interested in the standardized data we will have on the blockchain. So the aim is to have an ecosystem where partners will give additional incremental value from what we have today already. Yeah,
so 20 million total, you now have 5, you want to get to 10 million next year around this time?
Yeah, that would be a fantastic tipping point.
And then you have this information about the car has an identity on the blockchain. Is me as the owner, is that also part of the data that I can add, hey, I'm the owner now, and I can see something about it? Am I as a consumer going to be involved?
No, not yet.
It's just more going
GDPR is business to business. The VIN doesn't have an owner, the serial number of the vehicle.
Yeah.
So it's business to business business. But of course, if you start to think about it further and further, the mileage of the car, of a used car, are you interested as an individual? Yes, you are. So there's lots of things to think about, but we want to stay focused. This is what we are. This is what we're going to do.
Sure. We'll get first each 20 million, but then expand. I mean, I want to basically make sure that my car is not only done by the DUV. What's the name of the bureau of the local governments who basically keep track of the vehicles. I want to own my own vehicle, and I want to have my own identity as a person. On the blockchain. So that's good for next year. So where are we next year with Mobi? Are we going to have a huge amount of terabytes between the partners and which will train the self-driving neural networks?
Hopefully we will have all the governance practices in place, all the partners ready to actually deploy use cases, technology chosen, realistically, practically. Overall, for the whole Ocean protocol, we are building hashtag a new data economy. And the purpose for next year is actually to attract companies that want to build in Ocean, integrate their services in a decentralized, open environment, and get more data into the pod and test how this protocol and the tools that we are opening up for the data science community actually work. And it's my personal job to actually attract AI startups, talk to governments, and talk to large companies that want to actually use the protocol and test it. So hopefully next year we will see each other and I can tell you about the success that we've had.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.